Does the weight of constant worry feel familiar? A ceaseless hum beneath the surface of daily life, tightening its grip when you least expect it. You strive, you plan, you hold on tightly, yet peace remains elusive, overshadowed by a persistent anxiety about what might go wrong, what others think, or what you might lose. What if the very act of holding on so tightly is the source of the strain? This relentless unease, this modern anxiety, isn't just random noise. It has deep roots, often tangled in something deceptively simple: attachment. We become attached to outcomes we desperately desire, to expectations we place on ourselves and others, to possessions we fear losing, and perhaps most powerfully, to the shifting opinions held by those around us. Understanding this hidden architecture of anxiety is the first crucial step towards dismantling it. Imagine discovering that brilliant minds, living centuries before our time, grappled with this very same human condition. Philosophers and sages, observing the currents of human suffering, didn't just diagnose the problem of clinging and worry. They developed profound methods to cultivate inner freedom amidst life's inevitable storms. Their insights offer more than just historical curiosity. They hold potent, practical wisdom for our contemporary struggles. They spoke of an art, the art of letting go, not as an act of defeat or passive resignation, but as a sophisticated skill, a deliberate practice for navigating reality with clarity and resilience. This art involves understanding the true nature of control, accepting the universal dance of change, and training the mind to observe its own workings without getting swept away. It's a technology of inner peace, refined over generations. So, how can you truly learn to stop worrying so much? How can you loosen the grip of those anxieties that steal your presence and peace? The answers lie scattered like gems within these ancient traditions, waiting to be rediscovered and applied. Stay with us as we journey into the heart of Stoic acceptance and Buddhist non-attachment, uncovering practical ways to master this essential art of letting go in your own life. Modern life often feels like a pressure cooker of expectations. We are bombarded with images of success, happiness, and perfection, leading us to internalize immense pressure to achieve certain outcomes in our careers, relationships, and personal growth. We become attached to these specific results, believing our happiness hinges entirely upon their realization, setting the stage for anxiety when reality inevitably diverges from our meticulously crafted plans. This attachment extends beyond outcomes. We cling to our possessions, fearing their loss not just for their utility, but for the identity we've wrapped around them. We become deeply attached to the opinions of others, constantly monitoring their approval and fearing their judgment. This external validation becomes a fragile foundation for self-worth, making us intensely vulnerable to criticism and social anxieties, constantly performing rather than simply being. At its core, much of our anxiety stems from this fundamental mismatch: our desire for permanence and control in a world that is inherently impermanent and largely outside our command. We grasp tightly onto moments, relationships, and circumstances, resisting the natural flow of change. This resistance, this clinging, is precisely what the ancient Stoic philosophers identified as a primary source of human turmoil and suffering. Enter the Stoics, philosophers of ancient Greece and Rome like Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius. They weren't emotionless statues, but pragmatic thinkers deeply concerned with living a virtuous and tranquil life, what they called eudaimonia. Their crucial insight, forming the bedrock of their philosophy, was the imperative to clearly distinguish between what lies within our control and what lies outside it. This distinction holds immense power. What is truly within our control? According to the Stoics, very little. Primarily our own judgments, our intentions, our responses, our desires, and our aversions. That is our inner world. What lies outside our control? Essentially everything else. Our health, our reputation, the actions of others, external events, fortune, and ultimately, life and death. Anxiety flourishes when we desperately try to control the uncontrollable. The Stoic remedy, therefore, is not to suppress emotions, but to redirect our focus and energy exclusively towards what we can influence: our inner landscape. We are advised to cultivate virtue, reason, and resilience within ourselves. Regarding external events, even painful ones, the goal is acceptance, or amor fati, a love of fate. This doesn't mean passive resignation, but an active embrace of reality as it is. By accepting what we cannot change, we cease wasting precious mental energy on futile worry and resistance. We free ourselves from the anxiety born of unmet expectations about how things should be. Equanimity, a state of mental calmness and composure, especially in difficult situations, becomes attainable not by changing the world, but by changing our relationship to it, focusing our efforts where they truly matter, our own character and responses. Parallel to the Stoics, another profound tradition emerged in the East, offering complementary wisdom on detachment and the cessation of suffering: Buddhism. Originating with Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, this path emphasizes understanding the nature of reality and the mind as the key to liberation from suffering, known as Dukkha. Central to this understanding is the principle of non-attachment. In Buddhist thought, suffering dukkha arises primarily from craving tanha and aversion, our relentless desire for pleasant experiences and things to remain as they are, and our equally strong aversion to unpleasant experiences and change. This constant push and pull, this clinging to the agreeable and rejecting the disagreeable, keeps us trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction and anxiety. Non-attachment, nekkhamma, is presented as the direct antidote. Non-attachment in Buddhism doesn't mean indifference or withdrawing from life. Rather, it signifies letting go of the compulsive need for things to be a certain way. It's about engaging with the world fully, experiencing joy and sorrow, but without the clinging, craving, or desperate possessiveness that inevitably leads to suffering when circumstances change. It's a path towards freedom from the tyranny of our own desires and fears. Crucial to cultivating non-attachment is the deep understanding and acceptance of Anicca, or impermanence. Buddhism teaches that everything, absolutely everything, from material objects to thoughts, emotions, relationships, and even the self, is in a constant state of flux. Nothing is permanent. Resisting this fundamental truth, trying to hold on to things as if they were solid and unchanging, is a primary driver of anxiety and grief. Accepting impermanence doesn't mean becoming nihilistic. Instead, it fosters a profound appreciation for the present moment, recognizing its preciousness precisely because it is fleeting. It allows us to love and engage fully, knowing that change is natural, thus reducing the fear of loss. When loss inevitably occurs, acceptance of Anicca helps us navigate grief with greater resilience, understanding it as part of life's flow rather than a personal catastrophe. Both Stoicism and Buddhism, then, converge on this central theme. Our inner state is profoundly shaped by how we relate to the concepts of control and change. By focusing on our inner responses, Stoicism, and letting go of our clinging to outcomes and permanence, Buddhism, we cultivate a mind less prone to anxiety and more capable of navigating life's inherent uncertainties with grace and wisdom. These aren't just abstract philosophies, they offer practical tools. One of the most powerful techniques, common to various contemplative traditions including Buddhism, is mindfulness meditation. This practice involves paying attention to the present moment, observing thoughts, feelings, and sensations as they arise, without judgment or attachment. It's like sitting by the bank of a river and watching the currents of the mind flow by without needing to jump in. Through regular mindfulness practice, we develop the ability to recognize anxious thoughts and feelings as transient mental events, rather than identifying with them as absolute truths. We learn to create space between stimulus and response, noticing the urge to worry or grasp without automatically acting on it. This observation cultivates detachment, reducing the power anxiety holds over our state of being. The Stoics offered a complementary practice known as premeditatio malorum, or negative visualization. This involves consciously contemplating potential future difficulties, the loss of possessions, health, reputation, or loved ones. The aim isn't to wallow in negativity, but the opposite, to reduce the shock and anxiety should these events occur, and more importantly, to cultivate profound gratitude for what we currently have. By mentally rehearsing loss, we loosen our attachment to things we often take for granted. We appreciate our health more after considering illness, our relationships more after contemplating their potential end. This practice paradoxically increases present happiness and resilience. It prepares the mind for adversity, aligning it with the Stoic principle of accepting what is outside our ultimate control while cherishing the present moment all the more. Another practical tool for exploring and releasing attachments is journaling. Writing down our fears, anxieties, and specifically what we are afraid of letting go, whether it's a specific outcome, a relationship dynamic, or a self-image, can bring clarity. Seeing these attachments articulated on paper helps externalize them, making them less overwhelming and more available for rational examination and conscious release. Journaling allows us to question the underlying beliefs fueling our attachments. Why am I so attached to this outcome? What do I fear will happen if I let go? Is that fear truly realistic? This process of self-inquiry, facilitated by writing, can gently unravel the knots of anxiety and attachment, revealing the often irrational nature of our deepest worries and fostering a willingness to release them. Letting go also involves learning to accept uncomfortable emotions rather than constantly fighting or suppressing them. Anxiety, sadness, disappointment, these are natural parts of the human experience. Both Stoic acceptance and mindful observation encourage us to allow these feelings to be present without letting them dictate our actions or define our state of being. Resistance often amplifies suffering. Practicing acceptance means acknowledging the presence of anxiety or discomfort without layering judgment or secondary suffering. I shouldn't be feeling this. It involves treating these feelings with a degree of compassionate detachment, recognizing them as temporary states passing through awareness. This reduces their power and allows them to dissipate more naturally, rather than getting stuck through resistance. It is crucial, however, to distinguish this healthy detachment, born from wisdom and acceptance, from unhealthy indifference or apathy. Letting go doesn't mean ceasing to care about outcomes or people. It doesn't mean becoming passive or disengaged from life. True detachment allows for more genuine engagement, freed from the distortions of craving and fear. Healthy detachment means caring deeply, acting virtuously, as the Stoics would emphasize, and pursuing goals with intention, but without tying our entire sense of well-being to specific results we cannot ultimately control. It means loving fully, but understanding the impermanent nature of all relationships and forms. It's an active, engaged presence, grounded in inner stability rather than external validation. Indifference, conversely, often stems from suppressed pain, cynicism, or a fear of vulnerability. It involves shutting down emotionally, withdrawing from connection, and losing motivation. This is not the liberation sought by Stoics or Buddhists. It's another form of suffering, a denial of life's richness. The art of letting go cultivates openness and resilience, not emotional numbness. Integrating these principles into modern life requires consistent practice. It starts with noticing our own patterns of attachment and anxiety in daily situations. When worry arises about a work project, a relationship conflict, or future uncertainty, we can pause and ask, what is truly within my control here? What am I clinging to? Can I accept this moment, this feeling, without resistance? Applying the dichotomy of control in a stressful meeting means focusing on preparing thoroughly and speaking clearly, within control, rather than obsessing over how others will react or the ultimate decision, outside control. It means accepting their response with equanimity, learning from it, and focusing on our next virtuous action. This shift dramatically reduces performance anxiety and preserves mental energy. When facing relationship challenges, non-attachment encourages communicating honestly and compassionately, while letting go of the need to control the other person's feelings or behavior. It means understanding that relationships, like all things, are impermanent and dynamic, requiring presence and acceptance rather than rigid expectations and demands rooted in fear of loss or change. Dealing with financial worries can be reframed through these lenses. While prudent planning and effort are within our control, market fluctuations or unexpected expenses are not. Letting go involves accepting this uncertainty, focusing on responsible action, practicing gratitude for current resources, aided by negative visualization, and detaching self-worth from material wealth, reducing the anxiety tied to economic volatility. Mindfulness can be practiced anywhere, anytime. While stuck in traffic, instead of fuming, trying to control the uncontrollable, observe the feeling of impatience without judgment. While waiting for important news, notice the arising anxiety, breathe into it, acknowledge its presence as a temporary state, rather than letting it spiral into catastrophic thinking. This builds moment-to-moment resilience. The art of letting go is not a one-time fix but a lifelong practice. There will be times when attachment reasserts itself, when anxiety surges. The goal isn't perfection but progress. Each time we consciously choose acceptance over resistance, focus on our response rather than the external trigger, or observe our thoughts without clinging, we strengthen our capacity for inner peace. Embracing these ancient techniques allows us to transform our relationship with anxiety. Instead of seeing it as an enemy to be vanquished, we can begin to see it as a signal. Often, a signal that we are clinging too tightly to something outside our control or resisting the natural flow of impermanence. It becomes a cue to practice letting go. Cultivating this art fosters profound emotional resilience. When we are less attached to specific outcomes and more accepting of reality, setbacks become less devastating. We bounce back more quickly from disappointment because our core sense of well-being isn't solely dependent on external circumstances aligning perfectly with our desires. Our foundation becomes internal strength and adaptability. Ultimately, mastering the art of letting go, guided by the wisdom of Stoicism and Buddhism, offers a pathway to genuine inner peace amidst the complexities of modern life. It is not about escaping the world, but about engaging with it more fully, freely, and authentically, liberated from the constant friction of unnecessary worry and resistance. In summary, we've explored how modern anxiety is often deeply rooted in attachment to outcomes, opinions, possessions, and expectations. We resist the inherent impermanence of life and struggle against things we cannot truly control, creating inner turmoil. This fundamental tension was recognized and addressed by ancient wisdom traditions, offering timeless solutions. The Stoics guide us to focus intensely on what lies within our power, our judgments, intentions, and responses, while cultivating acceptance, amor fati, for everything else. This strategic focus conserves mental energy and builds equanimity. It teaches us to find stability within, regardless of external storms, by aligning ourselves with the rational order of the cosmos as they perceived it. Buddhist wisdom complements this by highlighting non-attachment, nekkhamma, as the antidote to suffering, dukkha, caused by craving and aversion. Deeply accepting impermanence, Anicca, allows us to engage with life fully, but without the desperate clinging that leads to pain when things inevitably change. It encourages letting go of the ego's demands for permanence and control. We explored practical techniques derived from these philosophies: mindfulness meditation to observe mental states without attachment, Stoic negative visualization to foster gratitude and prepare for loss, journaling to clarify and release fears, and the practice of accepting uncomfortable emotions rather than resisting them. These are not mere intellectual exercises, but skills to be cultivated through regular practice. It's vital to remember the distinction between this mindful, engaged detachment and cold indifference. The art of letting go enhances our capacity for compassion, connection, and purposeful action by freeing us from the anxieties that often hinder genuine presence and engagement. It allows us to care deeply without being crippled by fear or possessiveness. By embracing the art of letting go, we learn to navigate the uncertainties of life not with constant tension, but with a growing sense of inner stability and grace. We reduce the suffering caused by unmet expectations, fear of loss, and the futile attempt to control the uncontrollable. We cultivate resilience, finding peace not in changing the world, but in changing our relationship to it. Consider this. What is one attachment, one worry you habitually cling to that causes you significant anxiety? What might it feel like to consciously practice letting go of your grip on that specific outcome, even just for a day? Observe the resistance, acknowledge the fear, and gently redirect your focus to what you can control. Your breath, your intention, your next small action. The art begins now.